Good morning. Um, it's been a rough week for me. Um, okay, let me start over. Welcome back to Brandon Farm. Um, it's been a rough week, not gonna lie. So, for those of you that don't know, last Sunday, Sunday, I got a text from my mom, and she basically said, "We need to get your dad into the hospital." And that was absolutely gut wrenching for me. Um, so I immediately I raced over there. I ended up driving both of them to the hospital. Um, got him checked in. He was in severe chest pain. It was the most pain I've ever seen him in my life. Gripping at his chest, could hardly get a breath in, couldn't hardly speak, couldn't hardly open his eyes or lift his head. It was terrifying. It was a real life nightmare, one that I never want to live again. Um, so we get him checked in. Some of the nurses are like, "Oh, it's COVID." And we're like, "What?" I don't know. So they did X-rays, they did the CT scan, and that came back with pretty alarming news that he had blood clots, one in each lung, and his lungs looked terrible. And I think it was that moment where we were like, reality had set in, right? And we knew at that moment that we could lose him. And it was absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. I remember trying to like just keep it cool in front of my mom and my brother and my dad and just help where I can. But then I walked out into the hall and my brother came out to check on me and I just lost it. I lost it. And he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was just like, "What?" It was just too much. It's too much to watch your dad go through that kind of pain and then know that it's like pretty dang serious. So if you've been in that situation before, I was gonna say I feel your pain, but everyone's pain is different, right? So maybe that's not a good choice of words. But anyway, so they got IVs in him. Um, he was in pain for several hours before they moved him. They gave him morphine, which didn't do a dang thing. They finally moved him into the hospital. We were in the ER at this point, so into the hospital. They got him hooked up and did a sonogram on his legs, and they found the blood clot in his left leg. So that's where they were saying that the blood clots in his lungs came from. So it traveled from his leg to his lungs. So they call that a bilateral pulmonary embolism, which is terrifying. If I'm being totally honest, it's terrifying. Um, it was really hard to watch, but I'm thankful that myself, my brother, my mom, we were all able to be there for him through his stay at the hospital. He didn't get much rest, but with each day he progressed, and eventually he started to feel better, and the pain was less, and the antibiotics and the medicines and the blood thinners and all this and that he was hooked up to was actually doing something productive for him. So, I mean, I appreciate all the nurses and the doctors for the most part. There was one doctor that I wasn't crazy about, but I still appreciate, what he did for my dad and what all the nurses did for my dad. So, um, thankfully, he was able to come home on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I forget. This whole week has just ran together. Anyway, he's home now. He's resting, recovering, and like I said, with each day, he's getting better and better. We had so many people praying for him, and I just want to say thank you to all of those who prayed for him and kept him in your thoughts and our family. I really do believe in the power of prayer and God, and he really had a hand in this and allowed my dad to stay with us. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for all you guys who prayed for my dad and our family. So it's kind of a heavy topic, and I'm in the sun now. So that's just what's been going on this past week. And then, of course, after my dad comes home from the hospital, my oldest kid, and my husband are kind of like under the weather. Well, it traveled. So now I have it, and my little one has it, and we're trying to get over that sickness. So I haven't even been able to go see him while he's been at home, and it sucks. I'm not gonna lie, it sucks. But I'm trying to stay positive because I don't want to go over there and get him sick. That's the last thing he needs, is for him to get sick. So I think he's still having like some pain whenever he takes a deep breath. I really hope you guys can hear me. This microphone messed up the last video. Tempted to not even use it at all. All right. Pause. Let me check the video. Okay, we're good. Let me just straighten you out a little bit here. All right. So I didn't want to like hang out in the house all day today because I did that yesterday because I wasn't feeling good. Today I'm actually feeling a little bit better. Hopefully this sickness that I have, whatever it is, I don't know, goes away so I can go back to work and not feel like crap. What is it, Bevo? Yesterday I tried to come down here and just have a little chat, and I couldn't even be down here. I was like, nope, I'm going back up to the house. I don't feel good. I'm gonna move. Alright, hopefully you can hear me. The wind's picking up a little bit. Feels great though, I'm not gonna lie. Just don't know if it's great for filming. So, down here in the garden, I'm hoping to get a few things done. I have a few like potted plants that I really need to get into the ground. I don't really know where, because I'm planning this probably when it gets a little colder out, when things are kind of not surviving. I want to rearrange the garden. I'm getting the itch to rearrange the garden. And I tell you what, ever since I had my first Wise County Horticulture Club meeting, and I just got fired up about everything that, like, when I first walked in, I was like, this ain't for me. I'm in the wrong place. Like, but then by the end of it, I'm like, I found myself like answering their questions, right? Chiming in my 2 cents in my knowledge and what I have to offer. And that was really cool for me. But they were talking about composting. A man by the name of Marty. Can't think of his last name right now. But anyway, so composting, right? We have 2 compost systems going right now, and neither one of them are doing what we want. So I feel like that needs to be on my radar to get my composting systems in place and really make them work for me, right? So that's my plan for this coming fall, is to kind of rearrange a section of the garden so I can have like a decent like composting system, whether that be the 3 bin system, where the first bin is like stage 1, second stage 2, stage 3 would be your final usable compost. So whether it be the 3 bin system or what they call a keyhole system. So the keyhole system I had actually never heard of before. Basically, it's like a 6 feet wide circle with a little keyhole cut out, so you can actually walk into this, and it's a raised bed, so it's like 3-4 feet high, 6 feet wide, and with a little keyhole, so you walk in and you've got this basically like 2 foot wide circle that's out of like mesh in the middle, and that's where you would throw like all of your compost scraps, your kitchen scraps. Anyway, and that would basically feed your compost pile. And you could actually plant plants on the top. My mind went straight to worm farm. Is there a way that I can do the keyhole composting system, but also make it work for a worm farm? So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is trying to figure that one out. If that's even possible. Because then I feel like everything would be in the garden where I need it, right? Because you're going to use your compost in the garden. You're going to use the worm castings and compost in your garden. So I would have like just one centralized location. Sounded good to me. Sounded good in theory. So that's what I'm going to try to explore this season and next season. Probably won't get worms down here this season, but at least I can get my compost system in place. At least the hardscape of it. Maybe not the actual compost. Anyway, that's the goal. The other goal this weekend, something a little bit more achievable, is to get everything that I have potted either up potted, which means you're basically going to take your pot that you have that's now root bound because it's overgrown its pot, like this plant back here. The roots are just going around and round and round and round and round. And when you water, the water is actually not going into the plant, it's just running off and then going around in between the pot and the plant, the root system. But you're not getting enough water into that root system for that plant to actually thrive. So in order to do that and to take care of that situation before you lose your plant altogether, you want to get that plant out. You want to break up that root system and then plant it in either a bigger pot or in the ground. So some signs to look for is yellowing, browning, half your plant dying. It just means that it's not getting the nutrients it needs to survive. Okay, so that's kind of where I'm at today. Is getting all of my plants, my potted plants, up potted. The only one I have an issue with right now is going to be my rosemary. It's in a pretty big pot, and I don't have another, like a bigger pot to put it in. So it's going to have to go in the ground. I could leave it in the pot, but it's already been in the pot for 2 years, and I feel like if I leave it in there any longer, it may not survive. So I need to find a more permanent spot for that in the ground, so that way I can have my rosemary year after year after year. I feel like rosemary is one of those plants that is not indestructible, but really good to have because, for one, it's an evergreen, so it's going to stay green all year round. Goodness. Oh, my kid decided to come outside. Good. That's a good sign. Still coughing. It's a usable herb, so you can just cut it and use it for cooking. And it looks beautiful and it smells great. So I feel like it's a staple to have in your garden. A staple. I sound like a dang fashion blogger. It's a staple piece to have in your closet. No, it's a staple piece to have in your garden. So, I've got my rosemary I need to up pot. I've got my, what they call, well, it's not really moss rose. Well, maybe it is. I think that one actually is. So, moss rose and purslane, I always get confused. Moss rose actually has little flowers on it, and the stems, or the little runners, are thinner, versus purslane is more of a thicker, leafier leaf and stem because it holds more water. Both are equally beautiful, and I actually prefer purslane over moss rose. But it's almost like my purslane is turning into moss rose, and I'm getting really confused. So I need to up pot that. It's an annual. It's going to die in the winter anyway, but it just looks sad, and I need to replant it. Both my kids are out here. Oh boy. My teddy bear sunflowers are like petering out and drying up. So I'm going to see if I can maybe spread the seed a little bit. See if I can get some more teddy bear sunflowers to bloom before the end of the season. So I think this is what you're looking for right here. Right here. It's this little seed. I don't know. So I'm just going to replant it right here in this raised bed that I have because that's where I'm at. But I have all these ones that are drying up. And I could save the seeds from them. And see if we can get anything to sprout. Because they were really pretty. They're all kind of dead now. I have actually never saved seeds before. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut these right at the base. Because they're no longer looking good. And I'm going to put these in a little baggie and let them dry out a little bit more. And I'm going to try to save the seeds from these. I'm going to leave the roots in the flower bed because I feel like that's where your ecosystem is, and it's all part of that no-till. So no-till gardening is basically when your plant dies, you cut it off at the base, right? So where the plant meets the soil. That's where you're going to cut it off. You're not going to pull up like the plant like this and pull all that root system out because that's where your ecosystem is. That's where all your microorganisms are. That's what's breaking down the soil and adding nutrients back into your soil. You want to leave your roots intact. And then when you're ready to plant in that particular bed, you would just cultivate it. So you would actually like either broad fork it where you're sticking in your broad forks and kind of pulling up the soil, but you don't want to like actually till it because when you till it, your bottom is now coming towards the top and your ecosystem is now on the top instead of underneath where it should be for the root system. So you're just wanting to break it up just enough to where you can get more plants and more seeds in there, but you don't want to actually turn over that soil. Does that make sense? So these are my teddy bear sunflowers that I'm going to save and kind of let dry out. You can still see they're very green and very yellow. I want them to dry a little bit more, and then I'm going to save just the seed heads. So I'll basically cut off all of this lower part and throw that in the compost, but the tops I want to save and dry out so I can use them for next season. All right. I'm going to finish my coffee. I'm going to try to re-pot some things. Pot. And I'm just going to kind of try to take it easy and just enjoy my garden. Because every now and then we just need to be in the place that makes us happy and just breathe for a minute. This week has been extremely hard. And my body says, hey, you need to take a break. Take it easy. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I can, and what I can't, oh well, it doesn't get done. I'll do it next time. And I'm going to rest. Because sometimes we just need to listen to what our body is telling us. So, that's my 2 cents. And my advice is listen to your body. Don't ignore those things because then they can turn into bigger problems. And you don't want bigger problems. You don't. These kids. They're Try to tell him to take it easy and rest, and he's running. A little turd. So here is the beauty of worm farming. We harvested 15 pounds of worm castings, as you saw in my previous videos. That was a great moment for us because that's something we've never done before. So being able to start this worm farm with a goal in mind and then actually achieve that goal with 15 pounds of castings is incredible. So here's where my castings come into play. Here's my 15 pounds of castings, less than now because I've already put some out. But when I dig my hole to up pot my plant, I'm going to actually put a handful of this worm castings down in that hole before I put my plant in. And then I'll probably sprinkle some on the top after I've already planted it, just to give that plant an extra head start, to kind of lessen the stress of transplanting with all of these natural fertilizers and nutrients from the worm castings. Alright, without stepping on anything here, I've got my plant here, I'm fixing to plant it, but as I was setting up my tripod, I was looking at my kale and I'm noticing that I've got a pretty bad infestation of whiteflies. So whiteflies will actually destroy your plants. When I touch it, you can see, well, I can see, but you probably can't see it on camera. But like, here's the kale leaf that I just picked off, and you can tell it does not look good. It looks terrible. Those whiteflies are just tearing it up. So when you touch the plant, and you see kind of like this dust come up, but they're like flying, and you can actually see them on the leaves, that's whiteflies. So I'm almost thinking I need to take this kale out and get rid of it to get these whiteflies out of here. Probably what I'm going to do today, because I haven't been using my kale. I just like the way it looks. But it's looking pretty bad now. I think it's time for it to go. Okay, so let's get this planted right quick. Let me just show you. So when you transplant something, I've already dug my hole and I put the worm castings in there. So when I get this plant out, I'm just going to tilt it to the side and kind of try to get it to loosen up from that pot. This plant has actually been in here for a while. It may be kind of difficult for me to get it out. But you basically just want it to let go of the pot. Man, this one's really stuck in here. There we go. Yeah, so you can see the roots that are kind of left from that plant. This plant needed to be repotted a long time ago. But you can see, for one, it still has the shape of that pot. And that's not good. All these roots are just going around and round and round, and they're not actually getting any nutrients. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it up. That way those roots go out instead of around, and then plant it. Alright, so those whiteflies were everywhere. They were all over every single kale plant. So I took the machete, chopped it off at the base. They're flying everywhere. And I had some neem oil and Dawn soap mixed up in my little pump sprayer. Sprayed the heck out of it. So hopefully they won't travel to my other plants, although they're everywhere. I mean, there was millions and millions of them. So I sprayed what I could. The chickens are eating the kale. I'm not too worried about that. Careful. So hopefully the problem is averted. Now I have actually more space where my kale was to plant more things. I really appreciate you guys watching and hanging out with me and listening to me ramble about nonsense half the time. I don't try to be a big educational channel because I'm still learning myself. You would think I would know more with having a degree in horticulture and landscape management and working in all of these nurseries and being around it. But like I had said before in my previous videos, I've never actually had the opportunity to grow my own garden because we've always lived in the city and it's never been a priority for me. Having these 2 kids was a priority for me. And now that I feel like we're in more of an established season in our life, I'm able to have the garden that I want and to experiment with the plants that I want. And I'm loving it. So, and I think getting back into like the horticulture club and different things within gardening, that knowledge starts to come back and it starts to be like, oh yeah, this is what I learned in school. Like, I remember this. So that's kind of my season of life right now, is just getting back into the swing of things, getting back into what makes me happy, getting back into what brings me joy. So things that I know and I feel confident about, I'm confident in saying on here as educational things, but also know that I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. I'm still learning myself. So yeah, most of this is trial and error and seeing what all I can get away with in my garden and what works for me. So, and that's what I want to share with you, is my experiences, my failures, my successes. So I hope you enjoy watching my channel. I really appreciate you guys being here. Be sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe. I can never say that word. Subscribe to our channel if you like our videos. We'll see you next time.